Naevies. I am a huge fan of the Naevies by AEboards. In fact, they're the switches that got me into liking light tactiles in the first place. But of course, just because they're my favorite switch doesn't mean they're perfect. There's gotta be some room for improvement. What? More Naevies? What's with the stem color change? Why did they block the RGB hole? Okay, calm down. We're gonna get through this and I'll answer all your questions along the way about these switches. But first, I need to give you a quick segment from our sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay is the company for all your custom project needs, from 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication, injection molding, CNC machining, and of course, custom PCBs. The possibilities are basically endless. So whether you want to build your own one-off keyboard or any other desk setup gadgets, you can do it all with PCBWay easily. Thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring, and let's get back into the video. Okay, so here's what we're dealing with. 5-pin nylon top and bottom housing with a palm stem, double stage 63.5 gram spring with very light factory lube on the stem legs and the spring. Yeah, this isn't even remotely similar to the original Naevies. They got a different stem material, different top housing material, completely different spring, and are 5-pin instead of 3-pin. I found this really interesting because I thought the whole thing that made the Naevies unique was having the MPE material stem, the nice light spring weight, and the nice light tactile bump. But no, we're dealing with a completely different switch here. Not even like the stem color is the same. We'll get into all the differences, but first, let's talk about the tactility. And I gotta say, these got a buff. No longer a light tactile, I'd say. More of a medium bump. Though still similar in the way of having no pre-travel and a little bit of post-travel. It's the same type of bump, except just heavier now with R2. This alone makes the switches feel very different from each other. But that's not the only difference. The spring is completely different in these two. Because the new double stage spring on the R2s and the increased weight from 58 grams to 63.5 grams, it makes the R2s feel much more snappy on the bottom out and top out. Honestly, a bit hard to explain. I'm not too experienced on springs, so if anyone wants to give a nice thorough explanation in the comments, then go for it, I guess. These feel and sound great both stock and lubed, though I definitely recommend lubing these, as there is a very big difference. This was also the case for the original Naevies. Those actually had this weird feeling friction when stock, like a stick and slip feel, if that makes sense. I've never tried Novel Keys creams, but I've heard that's kind of how they're like. But here it wasn't really horrible, especially when you're typing at normal speeds, but it's still definitely something to know. And it got completely fixed after lube. But here on the R2s, they don't have this problem at all, and I think that's thanks to them having a palm stem instead of the MPE stem. So I guess it makes sense why they replaced it, noticing that there are some issues with the MPE material. That change, along with the top housing material change, led to them also having a pretty different sound profile. But of course, sound is all subjective, and of course, hearing through mics and hearing them in person is always going to be different, so I take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But here's a sound test anyways, comparing both the Naevies and the R2 Naevies, also with KTT Roses, just for some reference. Pretty noticeable difference, I'm not gonna lie. Again, the R2s are really so different from the original Naevies that it's really not a case of just new is better. Because some people might 100% prefer the feel or sound of the original Naevies over the R2s. And honestly, I kind of would agree with that. I really like the light tactile bump of the original Naevies, and I really don't know why they would make it all the way up to a medium tactile bump compared to the old ones. It really gets rid of the whole Navy character that I loved from them. I wish they would have kept the tactility a bit close to the originals and just refined everything else, like they almost did here. While the Switch definitely sounds and feels a bit more refined than the originals, there's a bit of an issue with the stem wobble. These really aren't quite up to par with all the other switches I have when it comes to stem wobble, which is weird because the Naevies were actually really good in this department. The R2s don't need films or anything, the housings are perfectly fine. It really is just the stem and the top housing having a bunch of wobble room. And I wish they would have fixed this. I don't know how they would let it pass when already having molds with the R1s that had great tolerances. And this is like noticeable while typing. It doesn't ruin it or anything. I still love typing on these. But if you're someone that really doesn't like having stem wobble or will notice it, then maybe these aren't for you. Again, I don't want this to be something that leads you away from buying these because I still love these switches, but it's definitely something to keep note of. Both switches, new and old, have their pros and cons. There's no right decision to make here when choosing between the R1.5s and the R2s. Both are going to provide a really nice tactile experience, whether medium or light. I've been dailying the R2s, and I gotta say I really love them. They sound just really clean, and I care more about sound than I really should, which is why I'm maining these over the OGs, though I think I'm going to be switching between these every now and then, or at least putting the old Naevies in another keyboard to swap between. I think these would have literally been the perfect switch for me if they fixed the stem tolerances and made them slightly less tactile. Because I really do like the double stage spring feel and just everything else about them, like the sound. But I do wish they would have kept it a bit lighter, leaning more towards the way the old Naevies were. So yeah, overall, they're both top picks for me. Can't really tell you which one's better than the other, because it really all is probably going to depend on preference anyways. But hopefully this video would have helped you to make a decision or not. And if so, I don't know, do a like and subscribe.